Hello, Janot Mendler. You're here with the Global Forum for Ocean, Coast and Islands. Could you tell me what you're hoping to get out of the conference?
I think I've already achieved it. We had a wonderful Oceans Day on Saturday over the weekend. This was the second Oceans Day within the UNFCCC process. The first one was in Copenhagen. We also had an Oceans Day that was very successful at the Nagoya Biodiversity Conference recently in Japan. And our success is not tied specifically to the negotiating text. Our objective is really to raise awareness about the pivotal role of the global oceans in climate writ large.
Raise awareness with who?
The role of the oceans has to do with the global climate because the healthy ocean, the high seas, the living ocean are the best mechanism for the sequestration of carbon. You know, the Earth is 70% ocean, and the oceans and the seas of the planet are like the lungs of the planet. They absorb carbon dioxide, they produce oxygen, and it's the interactions between the ocean and the atmosphere that is what we call climate. I think the understanding that sea life, the trophic layer full of phytoplankton, photosynthesizing, are actually responsible for absorbing 90% of the carbon budget takes place in the oceans. But at Oceans Day this year, I think the most important contribution that we've made is really bringing together the latest science on the role not only of the open oceans, but also the coastal habitats. And it's very interesting. We're moving forward, I think, with great success on the forestry front, but we're beginning to see that the sequestration of carbon within those coastal ecosystems, in mangroves, in seagrass beds, in salt marshes, are a much more efficient mechanism. And the story is actually in the sediment. Thousands of years of carbon storage are in those coastal sediments. So when we restore and bring back to life those coastal ecosystems, we get not only the adaptation benefits of better protection from storm surges. We can see from the satellite data after Hurricane Nargis in Myanmar in the Irrawaddy Delta that those areas where the mangroves had not been destroyed, those were the areas where there was the least human suffering, where people survived, and their livelihoods survived. The fisheries were intact. They could go back to the ocean to fish and recover. But the other side of the coin is that when those habitats are disturbed, there's a brilliant study now that's come out of California, one of the first. They looked at a tidal marsh that was drained about 100 years ago, and they've been able to date the sediments. Now it's a massive hole in the ground. It's no longer very productive for agriculture. It's played out. But the sediments are 4,000 years old. So the story that tells us is that in only 100 years, we've re-released 4,000 years of carbon sequestration. And we need to bring this message into the UNFCCC process, but we need governments who are making planning decisions to be aware of the importance right now of investing in natural infrastructure, in ecosystem-based approaches to adaptation for their own protection, for the health of the fisheries, upon which they say it's over 1 billion people in the world depend on fish for their sole source of protein. There are many more for whom it's an important source of protein. But in the future of the climate financing regime, these coastal ecosystems represent a very significant source of income. And we don't know how that architecture is going to develop yet. The science is very new, but we need to begin to look at it, and we need to bring it into the UNFCCC processes.
Okay, so if we just take it back a little bit, in terms of your ocean days, how effective do you think you've been at raising awareness and influencing? Who do you think you've actually managed to reach? To what end?
We've had the participation of governments talking about the issues that they're facing as panelists and also as members of the audience. So I'd say that in getting the message to coastal countries, we've been very successful. We are a very broad, neutral network, which is not just member governments, it's also academia, scientific institutions, universities, research institutes, also intergovernmental organizations. We work very closely, enjoy significant support actually from Global Environment Facility, and work closely with UNDP, with UNEP. To some extent, we're looking forward to better cooperation with Global Water Partnership, the importance of the water resource management at the coastal zone. And we also have industry partners, private sector partners. So it's really the coming together of all of these different segments of society from both the management perspective and the government's side that makes me say that we had a great success with a little over 90 people who came to Oceans Day number 2 on Saturday.
And so what are you hoping to achieve by Ocean Day number 3 then?
At Oceans Day number 3, I hope that we will be able to document significant progress, not just in the scientific community, but in the within the UNFCCC on the role of the oceans, understanding, number 1, that the most vulnerable countries and the most vulnerable people are in ocean, coastal, and island states. And I think the significance of the special category of the small island developing states is something that we are not acknowledging significantly. So I hope at the next Oceans Day that the moral, ethical, human dimension of this process is elevated, that we acknowledge that we are one human family and we cannot accept the economic dominance of the industrialized world dictating that the cultures and people of the island nations are not worth saving.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time, Janot.